The smell of something deep fried. The sound of screams on the carnival rides. The sight of thousands of people can only mean one thing. It's time for the Fall Festival. On this first week of October, Evansville's Franklin Street will transform into the Fall Festival for the 90th time. And in honor of that big anniversary, we're taking you back to a simpler time, before the hats and the bolos, and before Evansville became home to what's been called the second largest street festival in the nation. I'm Lindsay Merwin, you're watching My Hometown, and this is the West Side Nut Club Fall Festival. For years, we've all gone a little nuts for the West Side Nut Club Fall Festival.
Have fun! Have fun! We're enjoying the ride. Have fun! So cool. Those things were so big.
With its smorgasbord of food choices, from the strange,
these are turkey testicles,
to the sinfully delicious.
It's good.
It's not hard to see why thousands flock to Evansville's Franklin Street to get their fill. The 100+ booths and big family entertainment we know now sprung from an idea, an acorn, if you will, planted by a small group of guys 90 years ago.
Well, these are my hats since I've been in the club in '73. This was the hat and tie that they gave us when we came in.
Luckily, we have longtime West Side Nut Club member Dick Barkett to help us bring that history to life. He's taking us back to the club's humble beginnings in 1921.
Yeah, that's Charles Wolflin was actually the first president in 21.
The year a handful of businessmen got an idea.
They would meet and eat, and they decided that as a business club, they needed to have something more organized that would better the West Side as a whole, not just Franklin Street, but the West Side as a whole.
That group of buddies founded the West Side Nut Club, a civic organization with a serious purpose and a funny-sounding name with a few theories behind it.
They said they all called themselves a bunch of nuts. A couple different stories about how they became nuts. Somebody else said they always threw peanuts at each other, so they became the nuts or whatever, throwing peanuts at each other after they ate their lunch and things like that.
The self-proclaimed nuts decided on a slogan too: from small acorns, large oaks grow. They started small, to be sure, with West Side service projects that grew in scale each year and helped shape the character of the neighborhood.
The West Side is still more family-oriented, and they kind of grew in clusters of houses and homes and that. So I think that's to me is how how the big oak grew, and that is just through the civic mindedness of our predecessors, and that working very hard with very little money to better the West Side.
One example here, this playground on Indiana Street, which was funded entirely by the West Side Nut Club. It kind of sums up how the group's primary focus is all about Evansville. That mission translates to funding for schools and family-friendly destinations like the Mesker Park Zoo. And thanks to the Fall Festival, it numbers in the hundreds of thousands every year.
Back in, I think it was '69, the friend of mine that was chairman that year said that was the first year they cleared $20,000. Way over $200,000 a year.
But even before the festival generated big bucks, it was a hit with Evansville residents. Back in '21, its first year, the Halloween-themed event fell at the end of October, and it only lasted one day.
Where people came down and paraded up and down Franklin Street, and the businesses stayed open, and there was adults dressed. There was quite a few bars on Franklin Street, more so than what there are now.
But the Nut Club barely broke even.
It wasn't a moneymaker at all. Basically, they kind of threw everything together themselves, and didn't make a lot of money. In the late 30s, I think they decided they could start making money, and I think in the 40s is basically when the booths started coming in here and there, even though they were sparse.
That's around the time Francis Miller entered the picture. He was in his early 20s when he joined the West Side Nut Club in 1945, making him one of its oldest members.
By tenure, number of years in the Nut Club, I think I have that bracket to myself right now.
From the acorn mounted on his front door to the plaque displayed on his wall, there's no mistaking that Miller is proud to be a part of it.
It was a thing to do, to know who your neighbors were. And I was definitely the younger one at that time.
That was decades ago, and though Miller only has a couple photos left, what are we looking at here?
A clown.
The pictures he's kept, like this one of himself donning a clown costume for the festival parade, remind him of how much fun they had.
It was just good camaraderie, and kept growing, and I think maybe some of us grew with the festival.
But even though the Fall Festival grew larger, it wasn't quite ready to grow up. Back in the 50s and 60s, the festival had a Western theme. Men fancied themselves as cowboys, the women dressed up too, and covered wagons barreled down the street in the parade. It gave Evansville's hardworking grown-ups a chance to pretend and be kids again.
It was like a bunch of kids out in the yard. I mean, we had our gunfights, 2, 3 go in a store and bang, bang, bang. It sounds childish, but it was fun at the time.
Coming up on My Hometown, the Fall Festival attracts huge names and even bigger crowds.
They supposedly drew 100,000 people for that parade.
We'll tell you about some of the festival's surprising guests, plus this Fall Festival favorite isn't for the faint of heart or stomach. Wow! I learned how to make a brain sandwich and get my first taste next.
My Hometown is presented by Old National Bank, your bank for life.
The Fall Festival really hit its stride in the 1950s when celebrity performers came to play.
They had some big names for 3 years with Minnie Pearl,
3/4 inch fitted. I have to get more pig in.
Hopalong Cassidy, and Homer and Jethro.
My lungs are plumb collapsing over you, and I'm a-getting me a stone.
While comedy country acts Minnie Pearl and Homer and Jethro reigned at the Grand Ole Opry, Western star Hopalong Cassidy ruled the big and small screen and the Fall Festival too. The headlines from '56 say 50,000 people came to get a glimpse of Hoppy at the parade, and some, like Francis, got to meet him. And of course, this gentleman right here.
Oh, yeah, that's yours truly.
That's him, standing next to Hopalong as he strikes a signature pose. Francis remembers him as anything but an outlaw.
He seemed like just a regular Western type person. And he's a nice, soft-spoken gentleman, and he just fit in like he's been here, for a long time. Real gentleman.
And really popular. So famous that his appearance practically overshadowed a same-day visit from another familiar name, then Vice President Richard Nixon. Francis recalls him stopping by.
It was quite an honor, yeah.
I wonder if he had a pronto pup when he was there.
I'm sure everybody who's ever been on Franklin Street had a pronto pup.
Aside from the food, the Fall Festival was, and still is, a prime place for public figures to meet the people.
Years ago, the politicians would show up, wherever there's a crowd, and I'm not criticizing them, I'm just stating the fact.
Still, it was the entertainers who really created a buzz at the festival, judging from the pictures that remain. Here's Hopalong Cassidy crowning the Fall Festival Queen of 1956. Rumor is that contest actually shut down Franklin Street.
Because they said they had like 10,000 people there watching the Queen get crowned and that. So it was, I guess back then it was a pretty exciting time for them.
The excitement hasn't worn off for the winners in the contest's 60-some-year history, although the criteria for contestants is a little different now.
This one here is in '56, and they were given a pattern and material, and they had to make their own dresses and so forth.
You got the signature grin there. You're smiling.
Yeah, I was smiling.
Rita Bergwood says she never learned how to sew.
The dress was very pretty. My next door neighbor made it for me.
But when she took the title in 1953, she certainly knew how to smile.
Now they do a lot of talking and stuff, and we didn't. They asked us a few questions, but I couldn't tell you what they were. All I remember is me standing up there giggling. And so they called me the little girl with a big smile, because I just giggled all the time, you know.
Bergwitz still gets the giggles when she shows us pictures of herself as a 13-year-old perched on the throne of a showy festival float.
I was late to get my picture taken. I was the last one there, and they fussed at me.
As the sixth queen to ever be crowned, Bergwitz was the first winner with a nut club connection.
But I think I was the first one to be queen that had a parent, a father in the nut club, because he got hassled a little bit too in the meeting. You know, it was all in fun, but you know, he says he didn't bribe nobody. Because my dad was like that. He's fun, and
you won on your own merit, right?
Yeah, well, with my grin, I think.
And thousands of people looking on would make any 8th grader giddy.
You know, I just laughed, and I didn't cry or anything. I just kept laughing.
It's a good memory for Bergwitz, and so is the festival. She says growing up, it was more of a place to meet friends, but now it's become something else.
I don't think it's the same. Now I go down there to eat.
Which brings us to what's become the biggest fall festival attraction of all, the food. From the ever-popular Pronto Pup, a corn dog made with pancake batter, to chocolate-covered insects, to sweet treats doused in powdered sugar, most everything is dunked in the deep fryer and cooked to perfection. But there's one famous, or infamous, food that rises above them all, one that has fans lining up down the block. It's the brain sandwich. The ISIS Temple Patrol has been making them since the mid-'80s, and we've been scarfing them down ever since. Well, everyone except for me. So the ladies of the patrol are showing me how a brain sandwich is done from start to finish. For those who are a little squeamish, this might be hard to stomach. As we prepared the brains for the batter, okay, that's the stringy thing. Mm-hmm. We don't want that in our sandwich. No. I had a hard time too. Oh, okay, I found one.
Mash them as good as you can.
Okay. Okay, here it is. Here it is. Wow. Pork brains are squishy and the smell is a little strong, but that doesn't faze Wilda Burnworth at all.
When we started, I ate one every day out there. I love them, but they're not good for you.
Wilda's 83 now and down to one sandwich a week.
I like a lot of onion and pickle with mine and mustard.
It's the brainchild, excuse the pun, of Burnworth and a few others. And now that they've been making them for 26 years, they have a good system to meet the growing demand.
The first Monday night of the fall festival, we ran out of the 800 like I told you, and then we cleaned 500 pounds more, and that 500 pounds we mixed in my kitchen into batter.
Is that a good idea?
And never again.
Now the mess is contained to plastic buckets. Well, sort of. Little brain on the wrist. Little brain on the wrist. Gotta get rid of that. Then it's whipped into a batter with top secret ingredients.
I make sure I get the brains and the eggs mixed together.
Prepping the sandwich is no picnic. 12 hours a day for 4 days, but a little teamwork and a little flour make it fun. Soon it's my turn to try the sandwich for myself, but I can't help asking Wilda one question. What does it taste like?
But they're wonderful. They're wonderful. There's nothing like them.
Guess all I can do is quit asking questions and take a bite. Here we go. It's soft. Got a nice crisp on the outside, but you're right, it doesn't taste like anything else I've had. I'll have another bite. I did it. Even after seeing it from start to finish. This still happened. I have these ladies to thank for that. With 1,600 pounds of brains prepared, the ISIS Temple Patrol will be ready for the line bound to form outside this year's booth. And whether it's the novelty of eating something unusual or the taste itself, there's just something about that sandwich, and people can't get enough of it.
They love them. They form a line, and that line never quits at the Fall Festival now.
Coming up on My Hometown, it's the new booth on the block. I try a new festival treat with an unlikely ingredient after the break. Back at the Nut Club office, I'm still checking out all the photographs Dick has found for us in the archives.
This is one of the booths from 1960 then. It looks like they made it up like a log cabin, but you can also see the different big spaces between the booths and that even back there in 1960. So it there wasn't a whole lot of them up there in that.
We don't have those spaces now, do we?
No.
If one thing has changed about the Fall Festival besides the food selection, it's the space. Franklin Street is crammed with booths, and since the spots are so limited, any new nonprofit groups are lucky to get one.
5, 4, 3.
That's why the Potter's Wheel is working extra hard on its debut. The 8-year-old ministry, located on the south side of Evansville, has been on the waiting list just as long for the chance to operate a booth. But after the Nut Club acquired another parking lot this year, the Potter's Wheel and several other worthy groups finally got the okay.
And my reaction was, let's sign the contract. It was a happy reaction because right now we're kind of in a deficit at the Potter's Wheel, and I said this could be what could pull us out.
For Mike and his staff, the food they'll make at the booth means food on the table for those who really need it. And that, Mike says, is a blessing.
From what we hear from everybody else that has their booths, that they make upwards of several $1,000s, and so yes, we're hoping that that's going to offset our year, and we're going to be able to go into next year starting fresh with doing good.
Speaking of fresh, they're trying out 2 foods brand new to the festival: the deep-fried Klondike bar and deep-fried KoolAid.
There's only 2 booths that's going to be doing the deep-fried KoolAid, and we are one of them. And that's a new thing on the market, and everybody's saying, what is deep-fried KoolAid? So we'll show you when you get down there.
I'm fortunate enough to get a sneak peek as the cooks get some practice at the fryer. It's not frozen first, as I expected, but mixed into the batter instead. Okay, so check it out. This is a deep-fried KoolAid ball. Cherry KoolAid, I might add, and we're going to give it a taste.
It's okay. You can just
Nice and gooey inside. It's awesome. As for that Klondike bar, I think I just found my new favorite food.
Ice cream KoolAid.
That's a great combination. This is awesome. And even though they're not sure what to expect, the volunteers and Mike are ready to go.
But I'm planning on being there every night from 5 o'clock to 11 o'clock, cooking and meeting the people and just enjoying and getting to see. I've never been to the Fall Festival. Been here 28 years and never been to the Fall Festival, so this is my new debut.
Because after all, when you take away the greasy food, it's the social experience that sticks. It's 1 week a year when all of Evansville seems to be walking down the same street, a street that brings Dick back to his childhood when the festival was simply magical.
It was just amazing when I come in down here and see the people and the ride. I mean, the booths and the rides and that, and it was always some kind of high act, some kind of diver, some kind of acrobats, things like that.
Now that the festival has grown, and his family has too, he's experiencing that wonder all over again.
My favorite part now is I've got great grandkids, and they're from 6 years old all the way down to 1 year old and that, and I spend a couple full afternoons with them down here and that, and that's the most fun for me now, and that is to have them down here.
In a way, you'll find that the Nut Club is a family too. 300 brothers who, though they give each other a hard time, managed to pull off what some might call Evansville's biggest event of the year. And as the club gathers for the last time before the festival, its members may not be wearing their signature hats or bolos, but make no mistake, they're in full Fall Festival mode. It's a sense of pride that spans generations.
The club just means a whole lot to me, and I think it means a lot to all the members.
It's been a pleasing memory, and like I say, I really admire the people that are active now, and I just hope that it continues that way.
And it will, as long as club and community work together, what they've managed to do for 90 years. The Westside Nut Club Fall Festival is a little noisy and a little messy, but that's part of the fun. There's definitely nothing else like it, and that is something to be proud of. And that's the story of how a neighborhood gathering became the next biggest thing to Mardi Gras. With 135 booths this year, it's going to be the biggest one yet, and that means more to love about an event that makes the first week in October something to look forward to. Coming up next week on My Hometown, it's a sound so lively we couldn't help but dance. Join us as we head to Rosine, Kentucky, the birthplace of bluegrass. For My Hometown, I'm Lindsay Merwin. Thanks for watching.